Evan Mercer used to laugh when people called him the mental guy. He said his mind just worked differently, faster, louder, harder to silence. But that was before the voices in his walls started whispering his name, before the reflections began to smile without him, before he realized the thing haunting his apartment wasn't trying to drive him insane, it was trying to replace him. It started with the noise in my walls. It was soft at first, like the distant scurry of a mouse, something so ordinary that I ignored it. But the sound became clearer with each passing night, deliberate, steady, rhythmic. It wasn't random. It wasn't the kind of noise that belonged to animals or pipes. It was too controlled, like fingertips brushing the plaster, dragging slowly across the surface just behind my bed. I would lie there in the darkness, my heart thudding in rhythm with the scratching, pretending not to notice, pretending to sleep. But I couldn't. The sound was alive, and it wanted me to listen. Every night it came at the same time, 3:14 a.m. I didn't need to check the clock anymore. I could feel the moment coming. My body tensed before it began, my breath slowing, my eyes locked on the faint outline of the wall in the dark. And then it would start. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. Almost like someone spelling out words I couldn't read. I thought I was losing it. I pushed the bed away from the wall, but the sound followed. The next night it came from under the bed, soft but insistent, as though whatever made it had crawled closer. I told myself I was imagining things. I even laughed at myself in the morning, shaking my head as if mocking my own fear could make it disappear. But the next night, when I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I couldn't laugh anymore. The moment I closed my eyes, I heard the scratching again, closer than ever, vibrating through the floorboards. I tried to stay still. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to get up and turn on the lights. But I was afraid of what I might see if I did. I stayed frozen, my hands gripping the blanket, my heartbeat so loud I thought it might drown out the noise. When the sound stopped, I thought it was over. I took a deep breath, slowly exhaled, and dared to relax for just a second. That was when I felt it. The faintest vibration through the mattress, like something shifting underneath me. It wasn't constant. It pulsed in slow, careful movements. I held my breath, praying I was imagining it. But then the mattress lifted slightly, just an inch, as though something pressed up from beneath. I jumped out of bed and stumbled back, crashing into the nightstand. My lamp fell and shattered. For a long moment I stood there in the dark, my chest heaving, staring at the bed. The silence that followed was worse than the noise had ever been. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through the window, I finally found the courage to look. I pulled the bed away from the wall completely and knelt down. The floorboards were dusty, undisturbed, except for one spot directly beneath where my pillow had been. There in the paint I saw faint impressions, 5 small, perfect indentations like the tips of fingers pressed into the wood. I brushed my hand over them, expecting dust to scatter, but they were embedded, deep enough to feel. I stood up, shaking, my mouth dry. I convinced myself it was old damage, maybe from the previous tenant. Maybe the wood had warped. I needed a reason, any reason that wasn't what my mind was whispering. I tried to forget, to distract myself. I went through the day pretending everything was fine, telling myself I just needed rest. That night I moved to the living room couch, feeling foolish but too afraid to return to the bedroom. I left the lights on, the TV playing softly to keep me company. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I thought I heard it again, just the faintest sound, far away, as if testing me, reminding me it hadn't gone. Around 3 a.m., I felt my phone vibrate beside me. My heart dropped. I picked it up, expecting a message, but there was nothing, just a blank notification screen. I set it down quickly, pulling the blanket over my head like a child. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamt of being inside the wall, trapped in the narrow space, unable to move, my fingers scraping against the wood, desperate for someone to hear me. I woke drenched in sweat, the air around me freezing. The room was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator. I sat up, heart racing, telling myself it was just a dream. Then I saw it. On the floor, near the hallway that led to my bedroom, there was a faint line of dust disturbed, leading from the crack under the door to where I slept. The marks were too smooth, too deliberate, like something had crawled across the floor while I was asleep. I stood there for a long time, staring at the line, feeling the weight of the silence pressing in on me. Morning light slowly filled the room, and I kept watching it, half expecting to see movement. But nothing came. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that whatever made that noise wasn't in the walls anymore. It was already in the room with me. I didn't go back to my bedroom after that night. The couch became my new bed, even though it was uncomfortable and narrow. I didn't care. I just needed to be somewhere else. Somewhere that didn't smell like dust and fear. I kept the lights on at all times, no matter the hour, afraid of what waited in the dark. Still, the sound returned. The scratching came again, faint at first, and then louder, closer, until it felt like it was crawling through the walls around me. It didn't matter where I went in the apartment. It followed. I tried to convince myself it was just old wiring, maybe animals trapped inside the structure. I even called the landlord, pretending to be calm, asking if there were issues with pests. He said no one else had complained, that the walls were solid concrete, no space for anything to move inside them. I hung up without saying another word. That night, I tried to record the sound again. I placed my phone on the coffee table, hit record, and sat in the corner of the room, watching the shadows on the walls tremble under the light. I waited for hours. At 3:14 a.m., it began again. The sound came from behind the television, slow, scraping strokes, like nails dragging along a surface that shouldn't echo but did. I wanted to run. My body felt paralyzed. I just sat there, every nerve burning with tension. I didn't even realize I'd been holding my breath until the sound stopped. When morning came, I played the recording. I expected silence, or maybe static, something that would let me rationalize everything. But what I heard wasn't what I expected. The audio was quiet, but underneath the hum of the room there was something else. It wasn't scratching. It was breathing. Slow, uneven, heavy breathing, like someone struggling to stay quiet. My hands trembled as I listened over and over, trying to find some pattern, some proof it was mechanical, not alive. But each time I heard it, it sounded unmistakably human. I deleted the recording immediately, but the sound stayed in my head. It became something I couldn't escape. During the day, when the world was loud, I could almost forget. But in the quiet moments, the spaces between sounds, I'd hear it again. The faint exhale, the low rasp. It followed me even when I wasn't home. In the grocery store, on the bus, in the shower. Always close, always there, waiting. One night I decided to find it. I tore open the drywall behind the television, half hoping I'd uncover a nest of rats or something logical. My hands were shaking as I ripped away the thin layers of plaster. Behind it was darkness, not the kind that looks empty, but the kind that feels deep, like a hole without end. I shone my flashlight inside. The beam caught nothing but a black surface that seemed to absorb the light. I leaned closer, holding my breath. For a moment, I thought I saw something move inside. A flicker, like skin or cloth disappearing into the dark. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the light. My pulse was pounding in my ears, and for a second, I thought I heard the breathing again. But this time it wasn't from inside the wall. It was behind me. I froze, my skin crawling, every instinct screaming not to turn around. But curiosity was stronger than fear. I turned slowly, the flashlight trembling in my hand. The room was empty, the air still. Yet I could feel something, like heat on the back of my neck. I stayed awake until sunrise, sitting against the wall, too afraid to close my eyes. The next day, I tried pretending nothing had happened. I told myself it was just exhaustion, a trick of the mind. I even patched up the hole I'd made, covering the black space with a thin sheet of wood. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. That night, as I lay on the couch, I tried to stay awake past 3:14. I kept my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, my heart thudding so hard I could hear it echoing in my skull. But sometime around 4, I must have drifted off. When I woke, the room was dark. The light was off. I don't remember turning it off. My phone screen was glowing on the coffee table, the camera app open, recording. I grabbed it quickly, confusion twisting my stomach. There was a video, 4 seconds long. I hesitated before pressing play. In the footage, I was sleeping on the couch. Nothing unusual at first. But in the background, barely visible in the shadow behind me, a thin, pale hand rested against the wall. It was motionless for 3 seconds, then slowly slid downward, leaving a faint streak across the paint before the video cut to black. I dropped the phone. My mouth went dry. The air in the room felt heavy, hard to breathe. I wanted to tell myself it was fake, a glitch, a shadow, but I couldn't. I looked at the wall where the hand had been, and there it was. A faint mark, oily and gray, shaped perfectly like a handprint, pressed flat against the wall, just above where my head had been. The handprint was gone by morning. I ran my fingers across the spot where it had been, searching for any trace, dust, smudge, anything. But the wall was clean, too clean, as if it had never been touched. I stood there for a long time, staring at the blank surface, trying to convince myself I had imagined everything. But I couldn't ignore what I had seen on the recording. I couldn't explain how the light turned off on its own or why I had no memory of touching my phone. Every explanation I came up with crumbled under the weight of what I felt in my gut. Something was here, something that wanted to be seen, but only when I was too afraid to look. I stopped trying to record things after that. The more I tried to capture it, the closer it came. At least that's how it felt. Instead, I started writing things down. Small details, times, sensations. I thought maybe I could find a pattern, maybe even prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. But the notes didn't make sense. The dates blurred together, times repeated themselves, and my handwriting changed. I noticed it one night. Some of the words weren't written the way I write. They were slanted, rushed, jagged. One line chilled me to the bone. It said, "You shouldn't have moved the bed." I don't remember writing that. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched. Not from one direction, but from everywhere at once. The air in the apartment felt charged, thick with something invisible. I started catching glimpses of movement in places that should have been empty, shadows that shifted when I looked directly at them, shapes lingering in the corner of my vision. I told myself it was my mind breaking down from exhaustion, but the fear felt too real to dismiss. One evening, while brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection doing something I didn't. It was only for a split second, but it was enough to make me drop the toothbrush. My reflection blinked half a second later than I did. It smiled faintly, just at the corner of its mouth, while my own face stayed blank. The bathroom light flickered, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw another figure behind me in the mirror. Tall, colorless, its features blurred. I backed away until my shoulders hit the door. When the light steadied, the reflection was normal again. Just me. But I didn't go near that mirror again. From then on, I covered every reflective surface in the apartment. Mirrors, TV screens, even my phone's camera. I couldn't quite stand the thought of seeing something that looked like me but wasn't me. The more I tried to isolate myself, the more I felt it closing in. I'd wake up with my blankets twisted around my legs, furniture slightly moved, objects shifted just enough for me to notice. One morning, my kitchen chair was pressed against the wall, tilted forward as though someone had been standing on it to reach the ceiling. There were faint fingerprints near the light fixture, too long, too thin. The whispering started soon after. It wasn't loud. It was like the sound of wind slipping through cracks, almost indistinguishable from background noise. But it was there, always near my ear when I was alone. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew they were words. They came in slow, broken breaths, almost tender, like someone trying to comfort me. But underneath the tone, there was something wrong, something eager, hungry. Sometimes it would stop mid-breath, and in that instant of silence, I could feel it listening, waiting for my response. I never spoke. Then one night, it said my name, clear, drawn out, so close that I felt the air shift against my skin. My entire body froze, my chest tightened, and I could barely breathe. The sound came again, right beside my ear, my name dragged through a whisper that wasn't a voice anymore. It was something dry, crackling, like a throat that hadn't spoken in years. I stayed completely still for hours, my muscles locked in terror, until morning sunlight touched the edge of the window. When I finally moved, I found something on the floor that hadn't been there before. A small piece of paper, folded neatly, sitting where I usually placed my phone. I picked it up with shaking hands. The paper was old, yellowed, and thin, the edges crumbling as I unfolded it. There was only one sentence written in dark, uneven letters. "Stop covering the mirrors." I stared at the note until my vision blurred, the words swimming before my eyes. I didn't know if it had been written by someone or something. But as I looked up, my heart sank. The sheet I had used to cover the bathroom mirror was on the floor, folded just as neatly as the paper had been. The mirror was uncovered, and in it, for the briefest second before I turned away, I saw a face standing behind me. My face, only smiling. I didn't scream when I saw it. I couldn't. My throat closed, my voice disappeared, and my body felt like it had turned to stone. The reflection had been quick, just a flash, but I knew what I saw. It wasn't my imagination. The face in the mirror had been mine, but the eyes, they were wrong. Too dark, too deep, too aware. I stumbled backward until I hit the hallway wall, clutching the edge for balance. The mirror was still uncovered, but when I dared to look again, the face was gone. Just my reflection staring back at me, pale and shaking, with wide, terrified eyes. After that, the apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. Every sound, every flicker of light, every shadow seemed connected to something watching. I started hearing faint movements at all hours, slow, dragging footsteps across the ceiling, creaks along the floorboards behind me, the distant hum of a whisper that stopped whenever I listened too closely. My home felt alive, breathing around me, its walls pulsing like veins. I tried leaving, but something always stopped me. My chest would tighten, my knees would lock, and I'd find myself standing in front of the door, staring at the handle but unable to touch it. The next morning, I found scratches along the inside of the front door. They weren't random. They looked deliberate, forming curved patterns, spiraling inward like something had been clawing to get out instead of in. I pressed my fingers against them and felt a faint warmth, as though the wood had absorbed the heat of something alive. I backed away slowly, trying not to look at the walls. It felt like they were breathing in rhythm with me. That evening, the lights began to flicker. Not all at once, just one room at a time, like the electricity was being drained wherever I went. I sat in the corner of the living room, clutching my phone, using its flashlight when the bulbs dimmed. The air smelled faintly metallic, like blood and dust. Then I heard a faint tapping, slow and deliberate. It came from the kitchen. I told myself not to move, that it was just the pipes or the fridge. But the sound grew louder, turning into a knock, steady and rhythmic, 3 times in a row. Tap, tap, tap. I forced myself to stand. My legs trembled as I moved toward the kitchen doorway. The knocking stopped as soon as I stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the shadows long and heavy. Everything looked normal. The dishes, the counter, the small window above the sink. But then I noticed the refrigerator door was slightly open. I reached for it, intending to close it, but froze when I saw the reflection in the metal surface. Behind me, at the edge of the doorway, stood a figure. It was motionless, tall and thin, its skin gray like ash, its head tilted as if observing me. I spun around instantly, but the doorway was empty. When I looked back at the fridge, the reflection was gone. I slammed the door shut and backed away. The kitchen light flickered once more, then went out completely. I ran to the living room, fumbling for the switch, but the power was gone everywhere. Only the soft glow of my phone lit the space now. I sat in silence for what felt like hours, too afraid to move. The air was still, thick, and suffocating. My thoughts blurred into a haze of panic and exhaustion. Eventually, I must have drifted into a half-sleep, sitting upright with my phone clutched against my chest. When I opened my eyes again, the screen had gone dark and the room felt colder. I could see my breath in the air. That was when I noticed the shape across the room. Faint, standing in the shadow near the wall. It was me. My outline, my posture, but perfectly still, like a photograph come to life. My heart began to pound as I stared at it, unable to move. The copy didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stood there watching. Slowly, its head tilted to one side, the exact way I had done earlier out of fear. It was mimicking me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My mouth moved, but it was like the air had been pulled from the room. I blinked, and for a split second it vanished. I thought it was over, but then the lights flickered once, just once, and it was standing closer, only a few feet away now. The face was clearer this time. It was me, but hollow. My eyes looked empty, my mouth stretched slightly too wide as if frozen in a near smile. The room spun around me, my vision narrowing. I stumbled backward, crashing into the wall, but when I looked again, the figure was gone. Only silence remained, thick and unnatural. I could feel something breathing next to my ear, slow, synchronized with mine. The whisper came again, gentle but unmistakable, echoing inside my head. It was my own voice, repeating words I didn't understand, words that felt ancient and wrong. Then everything stopped. The whispering ceased, the air went still, and for a moment I thought the nightmare had ended. But when I glanced at the nearest wall, I saw my shadow. It was no longer attached to me. It was standing on its own, smiling faintly, its head tilted in perfect imitation of fear. I don't know how long it's been since that night. I stopped keeping track of time. The clocks in my apartment all show different hours now, spinning at their own pace, ticking out of sync. The sunlight that filters through the curtains feels wrong, pale, almost sickly. Sometimes it doesn't rise at all. Sometimes it's too bright, glaring through the windows for hours, even when it should be dark. I can't tell what's real anymore. I barely sleep. When I do, I wake up in places I don't remember walking to, standing in corners, staring at walls that feel warm beneath my palms, as though something on the other side is breathing with me. I don't leave the apartment. I tried once. I packed a bag, walked to the door, and turned the knob. It opened easily, but beyond it wasn't the hallway. It was my living room. The same couch, the same table, the same faint mark on the wall where the handprint used to be. I stood there staring, waiting for it to change, but it didn't. I took one step forward and found myself walking back into my own home. I closed the door again and sank to the floor. That's when I realized I wasn't trapped inside the apartment. The apartment was trapped inside me. The noises haven't stopped. The scratching, the breathing, the faint tapping, they all come and go in waves. Sometimes I think it's quiet, but then I notice small changes. My reflection has started moving again. I don't even need mirrors anymore. I can see it in the window glass, in the black surface of my TV, even in the blank screen of my phone. It doesn't copy me perfectly now. Sometimes it lags behind, sometimes it moves before I do. And sometimes it doesn't move at all. It just stares, as if waiting for me to make a mistake. I've begun hearing voices from the walls, faint conversations like a radio tuned just off frequency. I can't make out the words, but I know they're talking about me. The tone is always calm, clinical, like they're studying something fragile. I started writing down what I could hear, and the words changed as I wrote them. My handwriting doesn't belong to me anymore. It's sharper, cleaner, and when I read the sentences back, they sound wrong. They sound like instructions. Last night, I dreamed. Or maybe I didn't. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror again, the one I swore I'd never uncover. The reflection was smiling at me. I wasn't. It lifted its hand slowly, palm out, pressing it against the glass. I felt my own palm burning, the skin reddening as though I were touching something hot. I tried to pull away, but my hand wouldn't move. The reflection leaned closer, its grin stretching wider, its teeth too many, too sharp. It whispered something I couldn't hear, and then I woke up. But when I looked at my hand, the skin was blistered. Real. Red. Burned. I haven't slept since. The apartment feels smaller now, like the walls are folding inward. Every time I turn around, something has shifted. The furniture moves. The lights flicker even when they're unplugged. The reflection, my other self, appears in places it shouldn't. Sometimes I see it standing behind me when I blink, other times in doorways that weren't open before. I tried covering every reflective surface again, but the sheets keep coming off while I'm not looking. Once I found one folded neatly on the floor, and written across it in black marker was a single word. Finally. I don't remember owning a marker. There's a buzzing in my ears now, a low vibration that doesn't stop. It's like a hum beneath reality, something deep and endless. The air tastes metallic, the same as it did the night this all began. I think the walls are thinner now. I can hear breathing from the cracks in the floor, and when I press my ear against them, I hear my own heartbeat, but it's slower, heavier, deeper, coming from below. I've started avoiding my phone. It keeps turning on by itself. Every time it does, it opens to the camera, and for a split second, the image on the screen isn't the room around me. It's a darker version, dimly lit, filled with shadows that move. And in the center of that room, I can see myself, but not me, the copy, the one with the smile. It gets closer in every frame. I watched one of the videos earlier today. I don't remember recording it. The image shook, like the phone was being held by trembling hands. My voice whispered softly in the background, repeating something over and over. I turned the volume up and listened carefully, trying to understand. The voice was saying, "You're the echo. You're the one behind the glass." The recording ended with a sharp noise, metal against wood, maybe a knock, maybe a scrape, and then one final whisper, "Let's trade places now." I dropped the phone, my pulse thundering in my ears. I could hear movement behind me, slow footsteps crossing the floor. I turned around, and there it was. Me, but not me. The other version, the reflection. Its eyes were hollow, its grin stretched wide, hands pale as paper. I stepped back, but my body didn't move. I felt weightless, like I'd been pulled out of myself. The figure stepped forward, mimicking my shape perfectly, and when it blinked, the lights flickered. Now I'm sitting here staring into the dark screen of my TV. My reflection is sitting with me, but it's not moving anymore. It's smiling, waiting. I think it's my turn to stay inside.